Hello, everybody. It is Monday night, so guess what? We're here.
Here we are.
Here we are. Take it or leave it. I'm thinking some people might be interested in leaving, but you never know.
I hope not. Hi, Bob.
Good afternoon, Robert. Good to see you, or at least online anyway. So, it is the end of February. It's March already tomorrow.
Crazy. Time just flies. I feel like it's still like, what happened in 2001? What happened to 2000? We don't really want to go there, do we?
No, I don't think we do. So, how was your weekend?
Good. Busy. My daughter's birthday, so we all got together, which was amazing and fun, and nobody wore masks, and it was just nice for everybody to be together, and the whole family was there.
Wasn't a costume party?
What was that?
There wasn't a costume party.
No, it was a costume party. So it's just good, even for me, the bubby sits in the corner. Not really, not this one. I'm around with my camera taking a million pictures. I don't know what they'll do when I'm not around anymore. They depend on me. I've been doing it for years, right? I'm the one that does the pictures. So anyway, I have fun with it. It's good to see everybody, and
well, hopefully
someone will a little bit of normality. What's that?
Hopefully someone will step up.
Yeah. So how was your weekend? Or shouldn't I ask? Don't ask.
Don't ask. It was okay. I wasn't feeling that great on Saturday after the message, so I kind of for the afternoon curled up in bed and sucked my thumb for a little while. And we went to see a family yesterday that just they're going through some stuff right now, so we spent a little time there. But it was good, and starting to heal. I start physiotherapy tomorrow, so I'm assuming they won't. What was that?
I said that'll be fun. You'll have like the strongest fingers in the world, like 1, 2, 1, 2. Physical therapy for your fingers.
I'll do the Richard Simmons thing.
Yeah. Hey, I used to love exercising with him. He's motivating.
Oh yes, he was right there. And then Thursday I have my first post-surgery follow-up appointment with the plastic surgeon. So we're gonna probably take an X-ray and see how things are healing, and then I have to drive to Toronto right after that. So.
Oh, you're the one driving?
Yeah.
Fun.
Not really, but it'll be okay.
Yeah. I don't like driving in big cities.
Toronto is it just goes on forever. And this is someone who lived in Los Angeles for a year. And I mean, Los Angeles has got to be the worst in the world, but Toronto's pretty, there's a lot of traffic there, and it's big. I mean, it's, a lot of Americans don't understand that the greater Toronto area has about 6.5 million people. It is the fourth largest city in North America, behind LA, New York, Chicago, and it's right around the same size as Houston, I think.
Wow. I know it's busy, and I know people just, when you're walking on the streets, they just bang into you, and I've seen people laying on the sidewalks, and they just walk over them or walk around them. It's just so not me. I don't like it at all. I don't like big cities. I'm from Buffalo, New York, but, even when I lived there, I never went downtown. Very seldom. I lived out in the suburbs, and that's where I stayed. Nice little Jewish girl, out there.
You don't want to be downtown Buffalo.
No.
I preached at a church down there about 6-7 years ago, and oh boy, that was a rough neighborhood. Man, oh man.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, So we've got some more craziness that's going on in the world.
Very crazy, very crazy. You know, Darryl, I have, well, you too, being Ashkenazi Jewish, like I've had cousins contact me that live in those areas, and they'd say to me, you know, don't hate me, please don't hate me just because I'm Russian or just because I live in Ukraine or wherever they're from, you know, don't hate me, it's not me. And I just tell them, listen, that's my background too, really. Technically, I've never been there in my life, but
Yeah.
I said, I don't hate you. It's not you. You're a person. Why would we hate you with what's going on in the world? And I know people are feeling that. But yes, it's crazy. They just had supposedly they were going to try to talk peace, but we all knew that wasn't going to happen.
Well, again, you know, and my grandparents were born in the Ukraine on my dad's side, so I'm half Ukrainian. I think my grandmother, if I'm not mistaken, was actually born in Kiev. Although I know very little about my father's side of the family from back in Europe, but I mean this hits close to home. And just back in January, I was at a Ukrainian church in Toronto. Some friends of ours were renewing their vows, and she's Ukrainian. And so, you know, it's there's a lot of tie-in here, but the big thing for me is that once again, I know everybody's shocked about this, but once again, we have what is being portrayed in the media is not accurate at all about what's going on. And the elite have been trying to provoke this war for a long time. I mean, the moment that Trump got into office, you know, the whole Russian collusion thing started to get going, and they beat that drum mercilessly for years, and it dogged Trump through his entire presidency. What they're trying to make this out to be, though, is that Putin is the bad guy. And, you know, he's the bully, he's the aggressor. And the poor Ukrainians, what are they doing to them? You know, he's only got the largest country in the world of landmass, and he's not satisfied with that. And he's trying to rebuild the Soviet Union again. And you know what? That's all a bunch of poppycock. That is not what is going on whatsoever. And you know, to even say anything different now, and is tantamount to blasphemy. And how dare you? And you know, again, we are trotting out the hate speech and stuff like that. And you see, but this is what they do all the time, is that they manufacture these crises and then they pit people against each other. Because what did Yeshua say to the disciples? He says, a house divided against itself cannot stand.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have people who are divided, and I was just listening to a speech by one of the senators in Canada that he spoke up, I guess it was last week or something like that. And he was talking about how he has never seen the kind of divisiveness that he is witnessing right now in this country. Because what Satan does is he pits people against each other. And there is a tactic that's very well known. I think I referenced it in my book, and it's called the Hegelian dialectic. Hegel was he was a Marxist socialist philosopher. And what he said is that in order for you to get people from where they are to where the people who run the world want them to be,
Mm-hmm.
and the people don't want to go there on their own, what they have to do is they have to, in essence, manufacture a crisis. And this is what's well known in political circles as a false flag event. So they create this terrorist event, and they either get a patsy or they blame it on someone. You can look at all the atrocities that have happened, like with all the school shootings and stuff like that. Most of the perpetrators of school shootings have been mind control victims. They're MK Ultra Monarch mind control people, program multiples they're called. And so the Hegelian dialectic has it's called, you have thesis, you have antithesis, and then you have synthesis. So you have crisis, you have a solution, or you have people where they create a crisis, and the very people who created the crisis then want to provide you with the solution. And the people will run begging those who are supposedly in control for the solution for the very problem that they manufactured themselves.
Wow.
And this is what we see going on right now.
And see, hardly anyone knows about it. So keep talking so we can learn. It's important.
And it's incredibly devious. I had an opportunity on last Thursday night. We were invited to a prayer meeting by a church, a little tucked away place, and there was over 300 people that showed up for a prayer meeting on a Thursday night.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. We can't even get that to a church service usually.
It was something else. It was in the Dutch community, Dutch farming community, and they're very, very tight. And it was wonderful. And I had a chance to chat with a couple of young brothers afterward for coffee. And they had both gone to Ottawa. They'd spent about 3 weeks there. So they were there for like the whole time. And they were getting a chance to watch some stuff and witness things firsthand. And, obviously they had come from a fairly sheltered life, grew up in Christian homes and everything else. And this was really kind of an opportunity for them to step out and witness things. And I had a chance to talk to the older brother, and he was probably in his mid to late 20s, I would say. And I started talking about our politicians, the World Economic Forum. I started talking about program multiples and monarch mind control and all these different things. And the guy looked at me like he had no idea what I was talking about. It was, I mean, he wasn't disagreeing with me, but at the same time, you could tell that he was really having a tough time processing what I was saying.
Right.
And I get that. Listen, I have been called by God to study things and been exposed to things that most of the Christian world doesn't even know exists. But you see, the problem is that without knowing these things, you have no idea the battle that you're in. Yeah. So when Paul says in Ephesians chapter 6 that we are not to war again, and it's an imperative. Most of our translations say that we do not war against flesh and blood. But the way Paul writes it in the Greek, it says that we are not to war against flesh and blood. You don't take up arms against your neighbor. It is against the spirits that are behind them. And I said to him that I don't think Justin Trudeau can think for himself. I think that he is controlled by his corporate masters, the people that run the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, knowing that he is a graduate of Klaus Schwab, we talked about this last week, Klaus Schwab's Forum for Young Leaders, that they churn out these people with Marxist doctrine, and that their whole objective is to turn their countries over to the New World Order. So you've got France, you've got Canada, you've got Argentina, Australia, you've got many others as well. And so I'm talking to him about this, and you could see that it was just like he didn't know what to make of what I was saying. And I probably scared the guy off. I don't know. Or maybe he'll go home and think about it and say, you know what? There's a lot more going on than we really understand. But you see, the problem is that if you don't understand things like the Hegelian dialectic, if you don't understand things like mind control, MK Ultra, which was developed originally by the Nazis during World War II, and it was carried on by the CIA in what is infamously known as Operation Paperclip, where they went and grabbed about 5,000 Nazis after the war and brought them over to the United States and in South America. For instance, Joseph Mengele ended up dying a natural death, as far as we know, back in about 1977 or so. Mm-hmm. And if you don't understand these things that they're doing, then you're really in a battle that you have no idea who your enemy is and you have no idea what his tactics are. And anybody who has ever done any kind of fighting, if you don't know who your enemy is, and if you don't know how they operate, then chances are that you're not going to fare very well. So when, I come across as some people have accused me of being maybe just a little bit intense and, maybe overwhelm them a bit. The point is that Christianity, certainly for the past couple of years, has absolutely been getting its lunch handed to it. We are getting our tuchuses kicked.
Yes.
Canada is throwing pastors in jail for preaching the gospel.
Yeah.
And now you have a prime minister who refuses to acknowledge anything that he is wrong because he's not wrong. According to what he has been indoctrinated with, he is absolutely on the right side of things, and that we are not worthy of anything, that Canada should not be a sovereign nation. It should be under the auspices of the World Economic Forum, of the United Nations, of all these other globalist entities. And it's bad. It's really bad there. So if we're not understanding this, then we have no idea what we're fighting against. We don't know how to pray. I heard some lovely prayers last Thursday night in this church. I mean, everybody who prayed had to write out their prayer ahead of time, so it was scripted. There wasn't any spontaneous prayer or anything like that, like we do on Thursday nights. But I mean, they're well thought out, and they were good, solid prayers, asking God to intercede and acknowledging his sovereignty over things. But the problem is that when it comes to the whole issue of spiritual warfare, and that we have been given the authority to bind and loose, we don't understand what that means. The Baptists don't think that binding and loosing exists. The Charismatics think that you get to bind and loose everything, including, the cob of corn that you're wrapping a string around or something like that. I mean, it's crazy. But there's a lack of understanding about these things. And so when we go into warfare against these principalities, you better understand what the rules of engagement are. And number one, know your enemy. Number two, know his tactics. Number three, you also have to know that you are in good shape, because if you have unconfessed sin, if you have undealt with issues in your life, that is a chink in your armor that the enemy is going to make a beeline for. And he is going to cause you all kinds of problems that you didn't even know existed because of that. So what you see happening on the world stage right now, and remember that what a lot of people have called the prostitute media, the corporate media, which are not broadcasting truth, what they're doing is they are issuing propaganda. If you had a chance to watch my message on Shabbat, I talked all about Joseph Goebbels. I talked all about the Volkischer Beobachter and Der Stürmer, which were the two Nazi newspapers, amongst many other publications that they used in order to promote their hateful, lying invective against their enemies, primarily the Jews in World War II. In this particular case, the entire corporate media has come against those who are against the vaccines, those who are against the masks, but also now they're going after Russia and Putin because we want to demonize him. So the question we have to ask is, why is the media so intent on demonizing and vilifying Vladimir Putin? What is it that they're really after? Because for sure, that what they're saying isn't true. We've already had that demonstrated. I just saw a headline today that, while all this craziness in the Ukraine is going on, that the CDC has itself now come out and said that COVID came from a lab. Their own institutions are saying that. It's now no longer the alternative media that's saying it. And this still might get us banned, by the way. Who knows? Because regardless of who says what and you know whether it's true or not, it's not going to go against the official narrative. But they're saying now that it's come. So why are they so intent on demonizing Vladimir Putin? Because what is Putin's main issue? Has anybody really asked why Putin is invading Ukraine? I don't think most people really understand that. Well, you know, I even saw, I think it was MSN, a very reliable source of information, MSNBC or something like that, or MSN on online. And they said that Putin was objecting to democracy, you know, expanding in Ukraine, and that's why he's attacking them. You have to be completely under a rock in order to believe that. But they're just going to throw anything out there because the average mainstream lapdog out there is going to take whatever that they're fed. There's no questioning. There's no nothing. You think Putin really cares about democracy? Democracy has been all around Europe ever since the fall of the Iron Curtain, including in Russia. How legitimate it is, it's not for us to question. That's not what's going on, though. What is going on, actually, is that this guy that they have in power over there, Zelenko, and he came into power in 2019. He's a George Soros guy. They can backtrack his financing and his rise to career. He was an actor and a comedian before he got into politics. He also happened to make himself quite wealthy with the whole thing that's going on in Ukraine. By the way, the Ukraine was designated as the most corrupt country in all of Europe and 9th most corrupt country in the entire world.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
No.
The Ukraine actually beats out most of the countries in Africa for corruption.
And they are corrupt. I've been there. So if this is more corrupt than that, that's got to be bad. It's got to be really bad. It's
very bad.
And I actually just read an article today, too, about where you said he was an actor, comedian. Before you even mentioned that, I just got done reading an article, and that kind of shocked me also. So you're bringing up something that I was just taking a look at today.
Well, it's coming out. People are finding out about this stuff. Those who have ears to hear and eyes to see. Those who are actually willing to do the work. They're going to find out what's really going on. This Zelenko guy, he is owned by George Soros. Just like a lot of these clown DAs in the United States, New York and Los Angeles, and letting criminals out on the street. Because what are they trying to do? They're trying to foster chaos. You know why Putin is attacking the Ukraine? Because when the Berlin Wall fell back in 1991, Russia was promised that NATO would not expand into any bordering country, any of the former either Soviet republics or the Eastern Bloc. Okay? And obviously that is important because when you join NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which was created supposedly to be a bulwark or a check to the Soviet bloc, but they have missiles. And so when this guy Zelenko got into power, the negotiations to enter the Ukraine into the European Union and also into NATO began. Putin cannot allow NATO missiles to be on his doorstep like that. Kiev is like a few hundred miles from Moscow. So you could have short-range missiles there that would be within range. Russia and Ukraine are right on the border with each other. So what's really going on is, unlike the president of the United States right now that has opened the borders, and let, what, 2 million immigrants in or something like that over the past year that are not interested in integrating into society, but transforming it into something else, because that's been the whole plan. Is the United States, the U.S. Constitution would be able to face charges. Now, have to find a body that's willing to do that. But the point is that Putin is actually defending his country and saying, you are not going to put, listen, the United States almost went to war back in 1962. Remember that?
Yeah.
It was a little before, that was a little before my time, but you were around then, weren't you?
Well, I was just a little kid, but yeah.
You were a little baby. But yeah, I mean, you probably remember your parents talking about that. And what was the issue? The Cuban Missile Crisis. Because the Russians,
Don't worry, he'll be right back. Don't anybody go anywhere. Here he comes.
Yeah, what happened there? Baboon.
I don't know. You disappeared.
Yeah. So just unbelievable. Unbelievable. And so what's really going on is that Putin is being demonized because the CIA, oh, by the way, in 2014, the Ukraine had a pro-Russian government. It was friendly to the Russians. And Soros and the CIA went in and had that government overthrown and put in an anti-Russian government, pro-German government. I've heard reports of saying that some of the people in the Ukrainian government now don't even speak Russian or Ukrainian. They speak German. And so when Putin said that he's going in to get rid of the Nazis, he wasn't kidding. You're not going to hear that anywhere in the mainstream media. And who has the Biden family got all these ties with? This is when, of course, when Joe was vice president and they overthrew the government with the help of Obama, that they installed this anti-Russian government, but it was pro-US. And then, you have Hunter and Joe making millions upon millions of dollars. I mean, Hunter Biden was an executive on the board of directors for this energy company there, where he clearly, he was getting paid a fortune, and the guy has no energy background. But what he did have was connections with his father at the highest levels of government in the United States. And they made money hand over fist. I mean, it is so corrupt. It is so disgusting. And so all Putin is doing is protecting his country. And I wish we had people in North America that were doing that. I'd swap what we have for Vlad Putin and future considerations in a moment. But you're not going to hear that in the mainstream media. You're not going to hear that. All you're going to hear is that Putin bad. And you know what everybody's doing on Facebook? Now they're painting themselves blue and yellow, the colors of the Ukrainians. In the meantime, there's a whole bunch of Ukrainians on the east side that said, we want to join Russia because we can't stand this guy over here. He's a comedian. He's not even that funny. So there's your politics for the day.
Well, I mean, people are struggling over there. And no matter who you're for or who you're not for, or who you believe and you don't believe, people are dying.
Yes.
People are being killed. People are afraid. They're in subways. They're in their basements, wherever they are. Buildings are being blown up. I mean, who likes any of that? No matter who and what. But see, I'm probably different than a lot of people. Well, I am different, but than most people. I have this thing about war. Like thank God I never had to send any of my kids off to war, because I have a real problem with war. I don't believe I probably shouldn't even be talking about this, but I will. What the heck? You know, like when you send somebody off to war, you're just kissing them goodbye. That's it. Men and women, they're going off, they're leaving families and to fight someone else's battle.
Well, and you know, probably since World War II, we haven't really had a righteous war. Okay, you could make possibly an argument for the Korean War, but in reality, why are we sending our people off to fight battles against communism? And the whole thing about communism is that it's all Masonic anyway. I mean, they're doing regime changes, and you know, where the battle against this and that and the other thing. It's I can't remember who did the original song, but Bruce Springsteen did a cover of it. And, you know, the song goes, "War, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again."
Yeah.
War isn't good for anything. And so what happens is back in the early 70s, the band Styx, before they got big, they had an album called The Serpent is Rising. And on that album, there was a song called Young Man. And it's all about, you know, who do we send away to die? Young man. They fight the wars and they're the casualties so that bankers and the military industrial complex can get rich.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, you know what else war provides? Human sacrifice. Because Satan will receive any death out of war as homage to him. And
I never thought of it that way. I never thought of it that way.
Make no mistake about it, that every young soldier or every civilian killed in war is a satanic sacrifice, because that's all these wars are for. There's nothing righteous about this war. They have been trying to provoke Putin into war for a long time. And one of the things that they want to do is they want Russia to attack the US. And Biden is fully complicit in that. Because there's a little known report called the Deagle Report, Deagle. You can look it up. And by 2025, according to the Deagle Report, the United States is supposed to have a population of approximately 60 million.
So they're hoping that will depopulate?
Pardon me?
They're hoping it'll depopulate the wars if there was a war against U.S.?
If you have U.S. or Russian missiles that strike the U.S. and there's a nuclear war, oh, for sure. Absolutely. Got to get down to 500 million around the world, right?
Yeah. Crazy.
So that's what's going on kind of on a geopolitical scale. And what we have to remember is that anything that we are hearing in the corporate media is a lie. You can pretty much guarantee that anything they're telling you, the opposite is true, or there's something else hidden behind there. And so what believers really need to do is they need to be praying for discernment. They need to ask God, okay, I'm seeing something here, I'm hearing something here. Our tendency is to get all wound up about it, and you know, but what is we need the Holy Spirit to interpret things. We need the Holy Spirit to tell us what's really going on.
Yeah, it's difficult to know what to do, and yeah, it's discernment that we need, because who do we believe? Who can we believe? There's nobody that you can. I mean, okay, we're coming on here and trying to get some facts out, and who knows how long they'll allow us to continue that. But I mean, we're not 100% accurate in everything either. You have to, the only one who's accurate, the only one who can lead us is God. He's going to lead us, and we have to investigate. Like you said, we can't listen to everything we hear, and we can't believe everything we see. Because look what we just went through through the last couple of years. If we listen to every single thing we heard out there, now it's all started to contradict itself. Now that this is going on with this war, there's less and less talk about the jabs that we were working with. And now we're finding out things that are, they're coming forward saying this, and, things that we knew about already, they're just coming forward with it. But it's kind of underlining because everybody's so worried about what's going on in the world right this minute. So again, who do we believe? We knew some of this before. We were trying to get it across to people. Nobody'd listened because they're all involved in this media that doesn't tell it like it is. But we believe
and people have no desire to think critically for themselves. They have no desire to really discern things. I had to go get some government documents updated today because my health card expired, my driver's license had the wrong address, and we kept getting, this expired like 3 years ago. How come you're just getting it done now? Well, doesn't really concern you, but if you must know, because they were saying, well, there's this huge gap. Are you out of the province? And the last girl that we talked to, she was actually quite helpful. She says, if you're gone for a long time, then the government's going to assume that you're out of the province and they're going to stop your coverage. And, but one of the answers was, everything's been kind of locked down for the past couple of years, It's not as if we've had freedom. My wife had to go renew the sticker on our car last year, and she had to go 3 separate times because the lineup was so long. She ran out of time.
Yeah.
So, and when we went to get it done, but we walked in there, and like the first office that we went to, it was, you have to wear a mask and you have to put it up over your nose. And you got to pinch it and make sure that it's covered. And so we walked in there, my wife, my son, and I. We didn't have masks on. And, this one woman comes out and she says, we have to wear a mask. I said, well, I'm exempt. She says, well, then you'll have to wait outside. And then after that, it just went on, and it was craziness. And that I said, I just had a negative test that came back. And they didn't want to hear any of it. She says, it's for everybody else's protection. I said, against what? I said, I had a negative test. Doesn't matter. Don't confuse me with the facts. I've already made up my mind, as someone used to tell me all the time. And this is what's happened with the majority of people. So even though a lot of this stuff is coming out now regarding what really happened out there and what this, pandemic was all about, it doesn't matter. People don't care what the truth is. They only know that. And what was it that the Nazis all said? We were just following orders. I'll tell you, having been in ministry for as long as I have, when I look at the Bible and the Bible calls us sheep, it's not flattering. It is not a flattering title.
And tell us why.
Because sheep aren't very bright. Because if you ever studied sheep and what they do, they tend to wander, and they'll get into trouble. They'll get attacked by animals. They'll get caught in the bramble. They end up having, bugs that go up their nose, and you got to take care of them. If they fall over into a stream, they'll die because their wool will absorb all the water. If one sheep goes off the cliff, the rest of them follow. It's a good idea.
I can just visualize it. I'm sorry.
There was a great book. I forget the name of the author, but it was a shepherd looks at Psalm 23. And the guy was an engineer or something like that and got tired of corporate life and decided to go off and be a shepherd. And then so he talks about each of the stanzas within Psalm 23 and how they apply to the life of a shepherd and what David was really talking about. Because remember, before David was the shepherd of Israel, he was the shepherd of actual sheep. You know, when he went to fight Goliath, that he didn't know that he was going to, but his brother, or his older brother Eliab, the first thing he says to him is, "Who did you leave those few sheep with? You know, you're abandoning your duties. You're supposed to be taking care of things." And so, yeah, it's people, they don't want to think. Critical thinking, and this has, of course, been very intentional within schools, within television, and even in churches. You are not taught to think for yourself. How many stories have we heard, especially people who are on this network and who have come into the Messianic faith, that they started asking questions of their pastors and they were shut down, and some of them were tossed out of church.
Wow.
You're not allowed to question the official narrative.
No. No, I was told at one time in a church, just don't ask. Don't ask. Just do what we tell you to.
Yeah.
Raise your kids in the way that we tell you to, and you're good. Other than that, don't ask any questions.
Because and this is what we experience, or what we just saw with our prime minister. You can't question him.
No.
I mean, he is probably the most thin-skinned of any politician that we've ever had in Canada. And that's saying a lot, because we've had, a couple of prickly guys, but this one here, he reminds me a lot of Pharaoh. You got Moses, who came on a bunch of 18-wheelers and said, "Let my people go." And he was like, "No, not going to." And as soon as you question him on something, he runs out of parliament. And oh my gosh. Wow.
Oh, you're giving me all these visuals now. I'm going to be dreaming about Moses and the 18-wheelers.
We'll do a modern day. We'll do a modern depiction of the Exodus story, and you pull up to Pharaoh's palace, releasing your air brakes. We'll get Bob to do that for us.
Everybody's blowing the shofar instead of the horn, or their horns sound like shofar.
Yeah. we'll put a couple of shofars right on the side of the truck there and hook them up to the horns.
Oh, don't mind us tonight, guys. We're just out to lunch. We got to add some humor sometimes, right? All that's going on, Hong Kong.
And there's Bob again, denigrating the cats. Sheep are more kind than cats.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what, Bob? The day that you are able to cross the border and you come over here, I'm going to make sure all the cats are lined up for you before you sit down for coffee. I'm just saying.
That's funny. Yeah, then we should bring my 3 dogs over and the 5-6 birds and let them all come at each other.
And a partridge in a pear tree. And then
yeah, that'd be funny. So, well, politically, I really trust what you've got to say there, Guy, because you study all that. I have been, well, now I check everything out all the time, but before I just didn't bother getting involved because it was just too much for me, but you do help me see things differently.
Well, there's a lot of people who have traditionally taken that point of view that it's just, I don't want to get involved. It doesn't interest me. My wife was very much like that too. I have this certain fascination. I've always been very politically interested, understanding what's going on. God has led me to really kind of know what's going on behind the scenes, cultivated over many, many years, probably over 15 years now, sources for information, and also having, discernment in what's what and what's not. But Milena wasn't really like that. And then God kind of threw her into it a couple of years ago, where she had to get up to speed really quickly, especially when it came to the issue of spiritual warfare. Because after we did the city taking in Peterborough back in 2019, that was really our first experience on that level. And then when we came down to Niagara Falls, we got thrown into a situation that was like, whoa, where we were actually confronted with someone who was a program multiple. Now, I had studied this stuff. I knew what they were. I understood the dynamics behind it, but I would talk to my wife about it. She's just like, oh, no, I don't want to. But then when you have to deal with someone like that, it's like, you better take out your notebook and you better start scratching stuff down toot sweet. Because, here it is. It's staring you right in front of the face. And the reason that God put us through that situation is because I am convinced that when the release comes, when all of what's happening, the pressure that God is allowing to be put onto the world finally is released and people are released and that we are allowed to be let go, is that there's a whole bunch of people who are program multiples who are going to be coming out of the woodwork and they're going to be looking to find answers. And I believe God's going to want to deliver them. Yeah. And unless the church understands, and unless we in the church understand who they are and what they're dealing with, then we're not going to have any clue whatsoever to what's going on. We're going to be seeing stuff happen around us because when you have program multiples that start manifesting, it is a freaky experience because you don't know who you're going to be dealing with. When that programming goes off and they switch, and for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, go watch the movie The Manchurian Candidate, or more recently, the Bourne series. Robert Ludlum. He was the one who did the Bourne Identity, right? I think it was. Anyway, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but you want to understand what a program. Now, Jason Bourne was a program multiple. He was a victim of that kind of training, and he was programmed to be an assassin. But they've got different characters. They've got the Hollywood starlets, the beta sex kittens. Marilyn Monroe was the prototype for that. So you'll see all these Disney stars that kind of fall into that, where they they start dressing up in really provocative ways and debasing themselves because that's what they're programmed to do. We're going to have to start dealing with all these people, and the church better. Russ Dizdar was really, really instrumental in bringing a lot of this out, and that's one of the reasons why the enemy was allowed to take him out a few months ago, is because he was instrumental in exposing a lot of this. And so, for some people, it's hard to understand the level of craziness. I mean, this isn't your grandma's Christianity that we're dealing with today. We are dealing with demonic activity that has been unprecedented, maybe since the time Yeshua roamed the earth. And the positions and the mantras and the stock answers that the church once had aren't working anymore because they're not really working in what do you call it? It doesn't help you in spiritual warfare, is what I'm saying. And so Bob Kenny says here on the Lamb chat that his cousin Pavlo Lazarenko was the prime minister of Ukraine, and he was corrupt and had to leave the Ukraine, is now in the U.S. with the millions he took with him. That's standard procedure. That's the way it is with all of these guys. And so we've got to really understand that we're in a battle now with something with a different dynamic. Something that's entirely different from anything else that we have dealt with. And even what we were dealing with 5 to 10 years ago, what's going on right now is a whole lot different. And the body of Messiah really needs to start training itself, becoming more aware of this. You don't understand what program multiples are. You don't understand what MK Ultra is. Start studying. Find out, because you're going to run into some of these people. Russ Dizdar talked about the people who are called the chosen ones, and they're black ops. They're the Matt Damons. They're the Jason Bournes. And when their programming goes up, when they're given that trigger word or symbol or whatever it is, and sometimes it's no more than giving the Masonic triangle or something like that, that's their trigger, and they go into the mode that they're in. And then you have what happened in Las Vegas a couple of years ago at the Country Music Festival, where all those people were gunned down. You'll have, again, most of the school shootings that have happened over the past 10 years or so have been these lone wolves, or the church shootings. Same thing. That's who's caused these things. There's Joe Rogan actually was interviewing a guy who wrote a book on this, and he was heavily involved in exposing the whole MK Ultra thing. And he said that Charles Manson was a victim of MK Ultra. He was a program multiple. And so that, that craziness that he experienced and never got out of. I mean, to the day that Charlie Manson died, he was a raving lunatic in prison. But there are suggestions that he was one of their victims. So it kind of gives you a whole new insight into what's going on out there. And there's a lot of people doing things they don't even know what they're doing. That's what we're up against. You look at the book of Revelation and you see some of the things that are described in there. And one of the reasons why the book of Revelation is so hard to understand is because John was seeing things that there were no words to describe. There was nothing in the Greek or the Hebrew language back then that could describe what he was seeing. Hive mind, like the Borg with Star Trek.
Yeah.
They all had, well, that's what AI is going to be. One of the reasons why the mark of the beast will make those who receive it unsavable is because when you take the mark and you worship the devil, or you worship the Antichrist and his image, you're going to get tapped into that AI. You will never have another independent thought again. You will not be able to repent after that. You won't have the capacity to. It's not as if you made the mistake and God says, "Oh, you're done." You won't be able to. You look at Joel, and we have that famous song by I think it's the Gaithards that sing it, "Blow a Trumpet in Zion." You remember that one? They rush on the city, they run on the wall.
Great is
the army that carries out his word. That's not talking about God's army in Joel. That's talking about the Antichrist army. It says they're all in lockstep with each other. They don't break formation. They're moving through as like a convoy. And the reason is because they're the super soldiers that DARPA has been, creating stuff for. You go look at some of the stuff that DARPA has already created, and then imagine something 10 times more than that. And Marilyn wants me to do a series on the book of Revelation. Yeah, I knew someone was going to say that. Well, let me get through the book of Esther first, and then we'll see where God takes us after. I don't know.
Let's get through the book of life first. And then we can look at Revelation. It all kind of goes together, doesn't it?
So, and yeah, I mean, I know it's really heavy stuff. And this is kind of what you get when you have conversations with me. But, listen, honestly, we're in a time right now that is unprecedented. And those who want to go back to the way it was, it's never going to. Each day we get closer to the arrival of Messiah. And if you look at how time operates, I cover a little bit this in my book that, I explain how time works. And the fact that time and space are kind of interconnected, and it's all based on gravitational pull and speed of light and all this other stuff. And it hurt my brain to research the stuff. But the idea is that the speed of time changes speed. It's not constant. And things are speeding up.
Mm-hmm.
you just said, how did we get to 2020 to 2022? I remember in the 80s, back in the 1980s. I mean, I was, was a teenager back then, but it was like, we're things were so much different back then. But
Yeah.
each year things get crazier and crazier.
And that's scripture. The time has to be speeded up. If it wasn't for that, what would happen to all of us?
Yeah.
Time is going to go fast. It's going to appear like it's going faster, but it actually is.
I do believe it is. Things happen with greater frequency. Things happen much more rapidly. I mean, it took, before the computer age, it took new discoveries were few and far between. Now they're saying that information doubles every 30 to 60 days.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? That's beyond even my capacity to understand, that all the information that we have in the world doubles like every 30 days.
Well, if we just take a look at these phones, right? Just take a look at them. You get one, and before you even open it up, there's a new one, because there's new technology. Everywhere you look, there's new technology happening. And it's outrageous that these things are happening. Like, how do we exist? You can't even afford to get a phone, and then you get one, and it's outdated already. And if I look back to even my parents, but if I look back to my grandmother, she would never believe what's going on today, ever.
Yeah,
ever.
Thank you, Marilyn, for posting. Yes, it's Philip Keller. A Shepherd Looks at Psalm 23. Outstanding book. I mean, you'll get such a kick out of it.
Yeah, she asked if you have ever read it. No.
Did I ever get it? No, someone lent it to me, actually. So I did read it, but I don't own a copy of it. I should get a copy of it, because it is outstanding.
Yeah.
Small book too. It's only, maybe about 80 pages or something like that. But man,
so it's a quick read then.
Yeah. So anyway, you wanted to address something again when you were ministering online the other day. You something was brought up. No, when you were with your family, actually.
Yeah, and it all goes hand in hand. Well, I've been feeling that the Lord's been telling me to speak to people about this issue. So I'll talk a little bit about it now, but actually I did speak about it at a service. It's on YouTube if you did want to watch it, for the least of them. And it was titled, What If? But I was also talking to my grandchildren. See, I have a lot of grandchildren. When I say a lot, I mean a lot. And some of them are older, 19, 20, 23. And we were talking, and a lot of them have a lot of anxiety. And it's not just my grandkids who have this anxiety. It's youth everywhere, but it isn't even youth. It's all people everywhere, because of what we're living in. Anxiety has been a big issue to begin with in life. God talks about it, but it's multiplying, just like you're saying. The technology is getting faster, and this is going faster, and that. Well, so is anxiety, and so is fear. Now we know fear is a spirit, but I felt I needed to talk on what if, because what the kids are thinking, and what I do counseling also. So what anybody who's coming to me is, well, what if my husband leaves? What if the house burns down? What if the dog dies? What if? What if there is no tomorrow? And that's the main issue that's going on right now throughout the world. Like I said, I was talking to cousins in Russia. I was talking to people in South America. I was talking to people in the United States. I was talking to people in Africa. And they're all saying, what if there's no tomorrow? My one grandson said, Bubby, how do I even plan?
Looks like she froze.
Am I froze?
Can you all still? Oh, there you are.
Okay. So my grandson was saying, how do I even plan? How do I make a decision if I go to school or not, if I go to university? What about a job career? Why should I even bother? I know the Bible, he says to me. I know the end results. I see it all happening in front of my face. What do I do? And in the counseling that I do, in the ministry that I'm in, people are constantly asking, what if? So what if? What if? See, what if there's a war? Well, there is a war going on.
Well, there is a war.
What if COVID comes back worse? What if there's no tomorrow? That's what they're all saying to me. But you see, God is all knowing and we're not, right? And that's what if there's anybody out here watching it, and I know a lot of people are following Rabbi, and you're kind of with it, you understand what's going on, but somebody might be tuning in that is feeling this same thing. What if there's no tomorrow? What do we do? Where do we go? And I'm just so nervous. I can't sleep at night. That's all I think about, especially now. See, I remember when I was a little kid, like even where I live now in a small town, there used to be air raid things up, air raid horns or whatever they were, sirens, and every once in a while they'd go off. But when I was a little kid living in the United States, they'd actually have what they call air raids. And I remember being afraid, and it was the Russian people that we were taught to be afraid of back in those days. And you'd hide under your desk. And I mean, it brought a lot of fear to people. Well, they're living in that kind of fear right now. And, is there going to be a button pushed? Are we all going to die? How are we all going to die? So you see, for God, the answer of that is he knows everything, right? He knows everything. He knows precisely the day we were born. He knows the hour, he knows the minute, and he knows the day and the hour and the minute when we're going to leave this earth. So there's nothing we can do to change it or to alter the time and to alter the circumstances that God knows concerning when's our last day on earth. So what I'm trying to tell people, I'm trying to tell anyone who's watching this, or myself sometimes, or my grandkids, or whoever's, God's decided the length of our lives. He alone knows how many months we're going to live. And we're not going to be given a minute longer. So if we sit all day long and we worry and we worry and we worry, what if? What if they push the button? What if full third world war breaks out? What if it comes to this country? Then where's it going to get us? We're going to end up stressed out so bad that we won't be able to function. And then we're not doing what God wants us to do. So I felt like the Lord is saying to us to hold the line, just like what the truckers were saying all the time, hold the line. And when they were dragging some of the way, hold the line. Well, see, God wants us to hold the line.
Yep.
Not the truckers, not the action, but to hold the line. See, the Spirit of the Lord is with us, and we have to ask him to help us to stand strong and stand in our faith, right? To be strong, to be courageous, and to not be moved by what we're seeing in the natural, because there's distractions all around us, and we got to be careful. So that is part of what I wanted to try to get across to, like, I know this is going across not only on the LAM network and on some of your networks, Rabbi, but also on the ones that I am involved in, and our ministry network and our Facebook network. So I'm talking to a lot of people that I know for sure are living under that fear. Right. And, maybe you can address a little bit of this too. I have this pastor's heart. So, I'm always feeling for the people. I feel what people feel. And what you explain as far as politically, what you explain, what's actually happening, the World Economic Forum, and all that's happening out there. For some people, they're very overwhelmed right now.
Oh, yes.
And they're having a hard time. Like, I know Bob and Marilyn and different people are on here. They got it together. They know. They've been studying with you for a while. But for the people who maybe don't understand what you're talking about, can you give a couple words on what I'm trying to get across? Like how God, there's no sense in us concentrating on what if tomorrow's my last day? What if tomorrow's the end of the world? On how we need to live for today. Can you talk on that at all a little bit too?
Oh, I might be able to. Yeah. Listen, this is not the first time in history that perilous times have come upon us. I mean, even look at what the church went through during the time of Caligula and then especially Nero. It was sport to feed the Christians to the lions. Nero was lighting them up. He'd tie them up and coat them with tar and then light them up and burn them to death. Nobody's been crucified in North America for the last little while, but that was common practice. I mean, tens of thousands of people were crucified.
Mm-hmm.
Look what happened during the Dark Ages when the Catholic Church banned the reading of the Bible. I mean, if you got caught with the Bible, but the church used to burn people at the stake and to execute them. William Tyndale actually was one of the first reformers, and he was burnt at the stake for translating the Bible.
Wow, can you imagine?
Yeah, so you know what the problem is? All these people, and I don't want to come across as being indifferent, because what's going on is quite overwhelming. One of the reasons, though, that it is overwhelming is that North American Christianity is too soft. We haven't been hardened. And when I used to train in martial arts, anytime that I used to get slack and not work out as often as I should, or whether I would nurse an injury or something like that, and then I would come back and I'd go for a workout, I was bloody sore all over again. I remember when I first started, I was 16 years old. I took my first class it was July of 1986. And I was 16 at the time. And when I went, I mean, apparently I found out years later that there was a beginner class. I had no idea there was a beginner class. Mm-hmm. So I went right into the senior class, and it was an hour and a half long. And I remember that first workout, I did 10 minutes worth of abs. Well, if you're not accustomed to doing ab work, sit-ups, leg raises, stuff like that, and you do 10 minutes worth the first time, you have no idea. You didn't know your body could produce that much lactic acid. Mm-hmm. I couldn't sit up for a week. When I would get up in the morning, I literally had to pivot on my elbow and go up like this because my stomach muscles were, you get up in the morning and you do a sit-up. You don't realize it, but that's what you do. I couldn't do it. And the problem is that we have been so lulled into this time of comfort and this expectation that things are just going to be easy, that now that the tough times have come, and I've been warning about this for years. Mm-hmm. I've been saying it's coming to North America. And, when it hit, all of a sudden people are like, what happened? So part of the reason why people are so overwhelmed, I remember I used to do a show up until last year, and we used to talk about that when the lockdowns first started to happen and how Christians were losing their minds. And it was like, 6 weeks of not being able to go out and come and go as you please, and it's already affected you that bad. That's not really that bad. You're not being imprisoned for your faith like Art Pulowski is, who's still in jail and being denied bail. He's like one of the January 6th prisoners, another one who, by the way, committed suicide just the other day. What they're doing to those people is heinous. You know what? People in China have to deal with this all the time. You look at what Corrie ten Boom went through after her family got busted for hiding the Jews in the Holocaust, and they went to the concentration camp. Corrie ten Boom lost her sister. Was it tough for them? Yes. But what was their hope placed in? Was it their circumstances, or was it the God of their circumstances? Because I've read the Bible through a couple of times, front to back. I still have yet to find that verse where it says everything is going to be easy.
No.
I think it's in what, Second Hesitations or something like that, or I don't know. There is no verse on that. So you know what? Tough times are going to come, and they're going to be here. Okay, so now what do we do? I mean, you know, we don't want to sound completely callous and cavalier about it. Well, let's see what the scriptures have to say about that. Luke 12 and verse 22. And he said to his disciples, "For this reason I tell you, do not worry about your life as to what you are to eat, nor for your body as to what you are to wear. For life is more than food, and the body is more than clothing. Considering the ravens, that they neither sow nor reap, they have no storeroom, no barn, and yet God feeds them. How much more valuable are you than the birds? And which of you by worrying can add a day to his lifespan? Therefore, if you cannot do even a very little thing, then why do you worry about the other things? Consider the lilies, how they grow, they neither labor nor spin. But I tell you, not even Solomon in all his glory clothed himself like one of these. Now, if God so clothes the grass in the field, which is alive today, and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? Do you not seek what you are to eat and what you are to drink, and do not keep worrying, for all these things are what the nations of the world eagerly seek, and your Father knows that you need these things. But here's the key, and it's repeated also in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 33. Seek his kingdom, and these things will be provided to you. Do not be afraid, little flock, because your Father has chosen to give you the kingdom."
Beautiful.
If we are getting overwhelmed by our circumstances, then our eyes are in the wrong place. How many verses, and I must say this like every week that I get on and speak. David says in the Psalms that many tribulations has he endured, but the Lord has delivered us through them all. Paul says in Acts 14:22, with many tribulations, same idea, shall we enter the kingdom of God. Yeshua says in John 16:33, I tell you these things for you have tribulation in the world. It's guaranteed we're going to have trouble. You're going to be persecuted. Satan is the god of this world, but greater is he who is within me than he who is in the world. And so if you're being overwhelmed, if you're anxious, do we struggle sometimes? For sure. I wake up some mornings and I'm like, I don't know, how much more of what I'm dealing with I can take. You just got it coming from every which direction. But then we have to refocus. We have to we have to fix our eyes on Yeshua, who is the author and the perfecter of our faith. What if the missiles start flying tomorrow? Well, either God's going to deliver us or God's going to take us home to heaven, and we'll never have to worry about anything like that again. I think it all goes back to Matthew 10:28. What do we fear? Do we fear what happens in this world? Yeshua says, do not fear the one who can destroy the body. Don't fear Satan. All he has the authority to do sometimes is to kill your body. But fear the one who can kill the body and has the authority to cast your soul into hell. Him fear. Meaning that we don't fear what Satan can do, we fear God. And the type of fear that we have of Satan is different from what we have of God. I would say that most true believers, people who really have hope, don't fear death. It's the dying process that they're not all that enamored with.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference that because we don't want to suffer. So, it's kind of like, well, God, if you're going to take me out, make sure it's like with a meteor or something like that.
Or maybe when I'm sleeping.
Or if there is going to be a nuclear warhead that goes off, then make sure it's right over my house, please. Because, I don't want to be around for the radiation, all that stuff. But you know what? God's got an assignment for each and every one of us. And like I was telling these two young brothers the other day at this prayer meeting that we were at, I said, we have the privilege of being God's representatives in the world today. And there will be people when we get to heaven who will want to hear all about our story and what it was like to live in the time of the Antichrist. Can you imagine the stories that we're going to be telling around the campfire in heaven?
Yeah.
I got to face the Antichrist head on in his armies. Tell us about it. All we had to deal with was, crazy King Henry VIII or something like that. But you got the actual Antichrist? Or, the people who were in the Second World War and the Christians like Bonhoeffer. The stories that he's going to be telling in heaven. And how he was part of a plot to actually kill Hitler. We have the privilege of being able to serve God in these times because God trusts us to be able to handle what he's given us.
Yeah.
Now, will God give you more than you can handle? The standard answer within Christianity is, God will never give you more than you can handle. What verse do we find that in? God always gives you more than you can handle on your own strength. God will never give you more than you can handle in him because you can handle anything in him.
Mm-hmm.
We confuse that verse with that statement with 1 Corinthians 10:13, which says that no temptation has overtaken you except that which is common to man. God is faithful, will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation shall provide the means of escape so that you may be able to endure it. He won't allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able to get out of through him and trusting in him. But God's always going to give you more than you can handle. I can't even handle getting out of bed some mornings, whether, it's because I'm hurting or because I don't know where to start or whatever. But then I fix my eyes on Yeshua, who is the author and perfecter of my faith. He shall never leave me nor forsake me. He's promised to take care of me. I will not leave you even to the end. He says he's going to feed me even in times of famine. Are the food supplies shutting down? One of the big things that's going on with this Russia-Ukraine fight is that North America imports a lot of its food from there.
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine was long held to be the breadbasket of Europe. Why do you think the Nazis wanted it so badly? The wheat fields just go on and on forever. So as supply lines are being shut down, you know what? Elijah was able to eat in time of famine. So when our eyes aren't fixed on Yeshua, when we're not trusting in him, and we're getting all, upset and sitting on shpilkas and all the klimt and everything else because things are getting tough. Well, things have always been tough for Christians. Read your history book, for Pete's sakes. It's never supposed to be easy for us. Acts chapter 5 and verse 42, it says that after the disciples were beaten by the Sanhedrin, and they were this close to being executed, and Gamaliel stood up and said, you might want to reconsider that. He said, Luke tells us that it says that they rejoiced and that they were considered worthy to suffer shame for his name's sake. We are worthy to suffer persecution for God's name's sake. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for they shall see the kingdom of God.
Amen.
Man, I got that as soon as I got saved. I started getting persecuted because my family didn't want to hear about a Jew. A Jew doesn't believe in Jesus. What?
Right. Yeah, I know.
What kind of Bubba Mice is that? And
the
I remember
started right in the beginning as soon as we received Yeshua.
I went to my my aunt's Passover Seder, and oh boy, there were a bunch of very unhappy campers at that table that night. And I was persecuted for it. My not so nice uncle had some not so nice things to say, which he normally did anyway. I mean, wasn't anything new.
No, but this time it was directed to you with what you believe in.
Now was because I was a believer. And then when I went to my mom's sister, oh boy, you want to talk about hostile. They still don't know what to make of me. They can't figure it out, but whatever. But I mean, I was called an idiot at their Passover table for believing in creation. My aunt once told me, she says, only intelligent people believe in evolution.
Wow. Well, that was a really good answer. I actually jotted down a lot of what you were saying because, sometimes it takes two different personalities to be able to deal with something. Like I'm coming at it from one point of view and you're coming at it from another, not point of view, just a different way. And, I appreciate all the scripture you gave me, and I hope it ministers to people. I see that people were amening on here, so I know it was ministering to people. And that's what we have to realize. God's got a plan for us. We're here for a reason. We didn't have to be born into this time zone, but we have been into this day and age, and he's got something for us to do. So that's why I said we can't sit and dwell on it. We have to just pick ourselves up and do what it is that he has.
We also have to focus on what God has promised us. What has he promised? Listen, if we were about to step into the book of Revelation, my book wouldn't be of much use to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got to figure that we're not quite ready yet. I believe that there's going to be a reprieve. I think there's a window of opportunity that's going to be coming for us to get stuff done. And the reason why my book is coming out is because it's going to give the church a field manual as to how to walk uprightly, to get rid of the paganism that has crept into the church, and to start embracing the ancient paths that God spoke about in Jeremiah 6:16. Search out the ancient paths and walk in them, and you will find shalom for your souls, he says. Unfortunately, in that passage, it then follows up with saying that, and they said, but yet you said you will not do it. Well, I think the church is going to need to do it in the coming times, because not doing it is going to end up bringing the exact same result that it did to Israel in Jeremiah's time, which was the conquering of Nebuchadnezzar. And the other thing is that I've been ministering to Kenya for over 3 years now. And I'm going to be quite upset if God doesn't let me go over there at least once to go minister.
Yeah.
So I got to figure that, you know what, with what's happening, it's a wake-up call. And the more pressure that we're under, listen, we've got all kinds of things we got to keep our eyes on. We had the vaccine mandates and the mask mandates. Well, now there's coming out with the digital ID, which has been the whole game all along. The tracking system, we have to resist that like crazy. We've got to get on the phone with our members of parliament and our senators and stuff like that. Same thing with the U.S. You guys down in the U.S., you got to get November 3rd all fixed up. and right what was done wrong there. But that's only going to come through God's timing and God's interaction. We just have to be at the ready and waiting on God to give us our marching orders.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've really been focusing on, that God has kind of forced the issue with me on, is that I have to get up in the morning and I have to spend time with him before I get my day going. Like, I'm talking about just sit there in my office and have a conversation with God without any other distractions. And the reason is because I need to get my marching orders. I need to know what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we all need to be doing that. So if you haven't been doing that, then make some time to spend with God. Find out what he wants you to do. He has an assignment for you. You wouldn't be alive at this time, and you wouldn't be a believer at this time if he didn't. These are perilous times that we live in. There's no question. And I am certainly sympathetic and empathetic to those who are overwhelmed. But for some people, you've got to stop looking at the lint in your own navel. I once had a manager who told me one time, it was one of the most profound things I ever heard anybody say: build a bridge, get over it. It's not about you. There is only one thing that God is ever after, and that's his glory.
Yeah.
I say this almost every week in my messages. God is only concerned about his glory, and he's going to get it either through blessing or through judgment.
Mm-hmm. We
just got to figure out which side we're going to be on.
Yeah. And to ask for discernment, like you said a little while ago, that's got to be the big thing for us. Spending time with God before we do anything else, and discernment.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that's been helpful to people. I hope some people have learned some stuff. And want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. It's been a slice.
Sure has.
And I guess we'll see you. Well, tomorrow morning will be the continuation of the From Creation to Canaan series at 9:45 here on the Lamb Network. And we'll see you on the War Room on Friday morning, and then back to the Ruach HaEmet broadcast on Saturday.
And be there, or be square, right?
Indeed. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful night. God bless you all, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon.